Exploring the world by bike involves some incredible riding, tremendous experiences, and surprisingly, a ton of this. And it's this stuff, being able to move, handle, and not be intimidated by your bike, whether it's a CRF 300L or something bigger, is essential to having a great time. There is no worse feeling than being stuck. I've had some incredible experiences riding motorcycles in some very unique and rare places, and I've only really been able to do that because of a very simple but effective skill set. What I've often found with adventure riding is that my ability to explore the world is directly linked to my ability to problem solve the riding situation in front of me. I don't think it's about pure technical skill, feet up trials riding. I do not have the skill set of like a Paul Tarez or a Graham Jarvis. I just don't. And I don't think you need to still get off the beaten path. I think what you need, people like you and I, is the ability to have a skill set that solves the problems in front of us without them becoming a life event. Now, the better you are at getting yourself out of sticky situations, the more confident you'll be to take you, your bike, and your luggage to places that are more interesting. And that's kind of the whole point, right? That segues nicely into something that I think is criminally underrated in adventure bike riding technique: getting unstuck. It's gonna happen. You are gonna stall on a hill. You are gonna get caught up in a rut. You might even take a little jaunt off the track at some point. And the whole principle of getting unstuck is a rabbit hole. It can start with basic hill stuck technique and take you on a journey of foot placement and specific hip movement. But at the bottom of that skill triangle is the rock. Not that rock, this rock. Learning to rock your bike to build a tiny amount of momentum to get you out or over an obstacle stops you ending up being this person that is wasting time and energy. How do we do this most grandiose piece of skill? We use the clutch, throttle, and a little timing to move the bike forward, let it roll backward, and repeat. To do this, I first learn where the bite point of my clutch is. I then move the bike gently forward with a little throttle until it won't easily go anymore, and then I disengage the clutch to let the bike roll backward. I only disengage the lever enough to let the bike roll, rather than pulling the lever all the way in, so that when it's time to drive, there's no delay and we can keep building momentum. I'm gonna bet that that skill looks pretty simple on camera, but in my experience of teaching people, it's a little bit trickier and takes a little bit longer to learn than you might think. Getting that timing right to develop this skill quickly, tricky. That is why I made an entire MiniTip Monday dedicated just to it. The next skill is something that you've already seen me do in this video, and is something that I see experienced riders and beginners do badly all the time. I call it paddling. You can call it whatever you want. It really doesn't matter. But the skill is being able to effectively sit down with your feet out and ride your bike. It's a skill that, especially when you run out of talent to actually ride the terrain, is a great option. Sometimes we need to get through the river rather than get washed off the waterfall. However, it is very easy to do this poorly, make your life much more difficult, and end up stuck underneath your bike. Now, how you do this skill is going to depend a little bit on how tall you are, how long your legs are, and whether Mercury's in retrograde. You can do it one-footed or two-footed, but whatever you choose to do, there are some golden rules. If my feet are off the foot pegs at all, they're doing something. The most common mistake is the leg dangle, where it hangs in the ether hoping something happens. The problem with this is strength. When our leg is behind our hip, it provides no support, so when we need it, it's not helpful. Also, it has a tendency to drag us towards the ground, in front of the hips, people. Secondly, using them like we walk, going in front of us, makes a huge difference. When I paddle, it looks like this. No shuffling small steps, but the biggest, most confident, strong steps I can make. I also try to be deliberate about where they go, making the choice to put them in safe places rather than in holes. In the same box as those two skills, being able to turn your bike around efficiently is an insanely useful skill. Now, the spin turn is an internet favorite. If you make a video about this, it will explode, guaranteed. Everyone loves one. But realistically, I only use it about 10% of the time. Bikes are heavy, it takes quite a lot of effort, and it's just not that efficient and easy to do. It's much more practical to learn to be able to effectively U-turn in any situation. I've made a lot of videos about different types of U-turns to fit different situations over the years. But for me, the most effective to learn for adventure riding is the hill recovery U-turn. I do typically do this sat down unless a hill is very steep for me, but when you're learning to do this well, I would not recommend that. I use it to turn around in car parks, on the trail, and go and laugh at my mates when they've fallen off. It is an unbelievably helpful piece of technique for moving your bike quickly and easily to where you want to be. As with all these skills, I've made a more detailed video about how to do this, but when the video lands, it's only been seen on Patreon, so get your butt over there and watch that. The main difference between that video and how I do it most often is that sitting down rather than being off your bike means you need to have very smooth clutch control and brake control, and your balance needs to be deliberate and accurate. If I lose my balance here, well damn, it's not a fun crash for you or the bike. Eventually, this situation is going to happen. The V-Strom looks like a freshly hunted animal, and we need to be able to fix this. I think you should be able to pick a bike up with luggage on it on your own. Picking a bike up is actually equal parts strength and skill. Mostly, I think you'll be surprised how achievable this is. There are a gallon of videos on picking your bike up across the internet. I think I even have one, but learning to be able to do the two most popular on your bike before you fall off in the wilderness is a great idea. Of the two most common methods, you have the deadlift style facing the bike and the backward facing method. The latter is fine in grippy terrain and is possibly a touch easier if you're not so tall. However, the method facing the bike is, for me at least, the best overall way. It works almost everywhere if you get the technique right, and then even a little old Spanish lady can make a big difference to how much effort it takes. So before you head off on your next trip, do some practice, make sure you're strong enough, and if you're not, get stronger by practicing. There is one more mildly controversial little skill that I use all the time. For me, being able to turn around quickly and easily is the most useful adventure bike riding skill. U-turns, three-point turns, spin turns, all save a ton of time and energy. Now, there is another way that I love. The side stand pivot. I also recommend you look at where your side stand is mounted before you do this on your own bike, and I wouldn't recommend this on enduro style bikes. Learning to turn your bike around on the side stand is an invaluable skill. Now, if you're feeling like a fancy boy, you can go the whole hog and do it with both wheels off the ground, nice and balanced. And you'd be surprised, this really doesn't use a lot of strength or skill. But if it does feel a little bit intimidating for you, you can keep that back wheel on the ground and just hop it round. The point of this is that it should be pretty effortless. You might find that the second way is a little bit less stressful on the side stand, and that kind of comes down to the design of your bike's side stand. If it looks weak, it probably is, so be gentle. Now, there are a bunch of techniques that I left out of this video, so I'd love to hear in the comments technique that you use all the time when you're adventure riding, stuff that isn't very common, or things that blows your mind that other people don't use. Now, on top of that, you can get all the links to the gear that we use and our sponsors in the description. Remember, life's better when you're riding.